Hi there, I'm Will, and this is What Lies Between, a qualitative inquiry into whatever the fuck it is we're doing here. This first episode is with Alex Daniel, a very good friend of mine and my current roommate. You can find out more about Alex's work at 1117music.com/last, and that's all spelt out, no numbers. And so I hope you enjoy.
All right. Is that good?
Yeah, we're here. Can you hear me all right?
I can.
Actually, let's make sure this is nice and close. So I guess just to start off, like, how are we feeling actually like being here and doing this, like now that we've sat down?
Yeah, dude. It's weird. We've been talking about this for months.
I know. I feel like in the leading up to it, like I've been overthinking it so much. But you had said something to me the other day that made me, and I kind of mentioned this to you, like how I don't know. I can't even remember exactly what you said, but basically what had come across to me was like I need to just do it and make this happen. And I think that whatever comes of it will be pretty all right.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I will say that I'm feeling very nervous right now.
Okay.
And I don't like it's a weird thing because we've talked a million times and there's something about like cameras and
Yeah.
microphones and being in this environment, and I kind of just want to like I guess like ease into it a little bit and just
I'm pretending that no recording is happening.
okay. That's
I'm
a
imagining that I'm sitting on the porch with you, just shooting the shit.
that's a good way to think about it. The only unfortunate thing is we have to remember things like tilting the microphone a little bit towards you.
Indeed.
Because I think yeah, you should be able to like just how I've got it like this.
Oh, yeah.
The U
Oh, there we go. There we
Yeah.
go. Okay.
Yeah, okay, that sounds perfect.
Nice.
So in like kind of thinking about what this is gonna be and like the sort of like topics, I suppose, is it's kind of broad as fuck, but it's just like I want to talk about meaning making, and because I think that what we can stem from that might be pretty cool. I guess I just want to start off by just asking, how do you make meaning in your life?
Whew.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I I struggle to do it all the time. I think I don't know when or how this started, but I'm always trying to interpret everything around me. Like down to like oh, I left this book on my nightstand and not that one. Like what does that mean today?
Yeah.
I left off on this page and this is the sentence that I've been lingering on. Like how does that frame what happens to me going forward? And for me, I think that gets kind of messy. I've been trying more recently to let go of that, to let meaning happen instead of like always having that interpretive frame kind of running. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. That it like rung a million different bells because I'm like, well, I'm curious, like, is that something that you like? When would you say that you noticed that's the way you started like looking at the world is through that sort of interpretive lens?
Ooh, I know I've been doing it for a really long time, and it might have been that I noticed it when it kind of started breaking down, like when it started confusing me and making it like made my days more difficult to move through, rather than giving me comfort. You know, I was kind of getting lost, and so I started journaling like very in earnest at the age of 15, and for a long time that was like that was my meaning making. That was a friendly, comforting place. That was always a way for me to come back to myself and understand how things were going and that I was okay. And yeah, that started to break down. You and I have talked a lot about this, and I always bring it back to this, but it started to break down during COVID. That was really when because I think I had nothing but that. I could only sit with that, and it became too much. Yeah.
Okay. So what? And when you say that, like, or well, maybe you didn't say these exact words, but I get the sense that it's like something that helped you deal with just life, like in a way. And like, what do you think I guess in pre-COVID, how did that help? Like what in kind of a specific way? Like, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, well, I remember often thinking that it was helping me track my ups and downs.
Okay.
Just to understand, like, oh, last year I was mostly okay, but I would dip low when this would start to happen, and I can't give you a specific example of what that was,
Sure.
but yeah, it helped me reflect. I don't remember what the question was, but hopefully that.
No, like that's kind of what I was looking for, and just like it sounds like it was kind of a mirror of sorts, like, because I mean, my understanding of like my use of journaling, at least, has always been that like all the abstraction that happens in my mind is like much easier organized and fleshed out on paper, and it seems to like bring some sort of clarity that then you can look back on and associate with however you felt in those moments, and you can like ascribe meaning to it, and like, or at least maybe not, like, because meaning is so much goes so much further beyond words in my head, but like you can at least put words to it, and words bring a sort of comfort. Is there any accuracy to that? Like,
totally, yeah. Putting words to it and words bringing comfort, and then it also, for a long time, or in the earlier stages, it like helped me identify a baseline. It's like, am I okay right now? Oh, I think I am, because I can see, I can see when I've been worse than this and when I've been better than this, and this seems all right, you know?
Yeah.
But then later it became a meaning. It became more of a meaning making exercise, where I started to try to figure out, like, where have I been and where am I headed? Like, what does this all mean? What's my story? What am I supposed to be doing? Yeah, it became that.
Yeah, that I can't help, because I did just get done listening to the last album and reading the last journal.
Nice.
I can't, like, well, let me first start by saying that I remember when you first introduced me to your music, and you were like, you can find 1117 Music on Spotify, all that fun stuff, and I was like, shoot, I'll go check it out, because like at that point, like in my head, I was just like, here's this person that I've really enjoyed connecting with. I'm also sinking lower and lower as we go on here, so
Rise up.
Yeah. But here's someone that I've been connecting with, that I really enjoy our conversations and stuff, and I think previously in my life I hadn't really known how to make meaning, or I didn't really even know what that meant, you know. And I think part of my journey through that has been like seeing it through other people. And so I started to listen to your music, and I didn't get it. I didn't, because I think especially listening to it in a vacuum of sorts, like with just some of the, we had connected, right? Like I felt like comfortable with you. I think we started to have like a building a friendship, like when we started like taking the walks along the river and stuff like that.
And climbing.
Yes, and climbing, of course. But like it didn't resonate with me. I think I was listening to it in a way that I'd always listen to music, in terms of like, do I like it or I don't like it, or like, not even necessarily that, but like, does it make me want to dance? Does it like sound good? And there's some songs I remember, what's it called? What's the second song on the album? Sublimation. Like that, I actually
that's a dance number.
Yeah, I like that shit. Like I remember thinking, this is like a certified banger. Like, like it like made me want to move and made me want to dance. But now when I've been listening to it, I feel like it's taught me to listen to music in a completely different way.
That's awesome.
And part of that is like how, and I've said this to you before, but like it seems like you put so much intention into your work. And I had a moment, I've been waiting to share this with you, like earlier when I was listening to it, where I was like, I just had the feeling that you were like, this was you bearing your soul in a way. And is that like, I'm curious to talk about that. Like
somehow, I at some point, actually, I don't know if this was in my teens or earlier, but I got the idea that that's what music was supposed to be. Is like, it was supposed to be like the rawest form of expression. Like, I grew up listening to alternative rock songs on the radio, like Green Day, Weezer,
3B?
Oasis, 3B. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, that I remember like, I remember trying to categorize for a long time, like, what are my favorite songs? And then at some point I don't know when it flipped from being like, what do I like, to, how real is this? You know, how, what is this person saying, and am I able to connect and get a glimpse into who they are and what they've seen, you know? But yeah, when I started to play guitar, I was in that mode. And then that's sort of how I learned to write songs, was just like, okay, what's the deepest thing I feel right now? And now how can I make that known through sound?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I think that as rawest form, like that's what it's supposed to be. Or I guess supposed to is not the right way of putting it, but like maybe that's where it originated, as like an extension of emotion and like to express that.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I bet a lot of people have a lot of opinions on that.
Sure.
And I've come to like, I've reached a place where I, sometimes I listen to music and I'm like, it can never be 100% authentic because it's always on some level of performance. And then that makes me think like, so why kid myself? Why try to pretend like this is such a raw, authentic experience, and why not just make it something enjoyable, something people just want to hear? And like, maybe I'm coming around to being like, dude, you don't got to be so raw. It's too much.
Maybe there's a happy medium.
There might be a happy medium, yeah.
But also, like, what part of the performance like takes away from the authenticity of it?
Yeah. Good question, because I guess that makes it. That would make it seem like something can only be authentic if it is experienced spontaneously in the moment, and recreating it through a recording or recreating it through a live performance. There's authenticity in that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like there's different levels to it. Because even, I mean, we've talked about this before, but like, I'll hear a song that I've heard a million times, and it always seems that, well, actually, no, even songs that I'm listening to a lot lately, it's like I'll be in a different state though, and hear it, and the words that I've heard a million times will hit me in a way that's never hit me before, and it'll take on new meaning. And that's, I think that sort of experience is what has kind of like shifted this whole thing, whatever the fuck we're doing here, is having a conversation and recording it, and has shifted it towards that meaning making, because like that's insane. That's kind of insane to me, like in terms of like how I used to view music and words and all the things, the expression that we humans take part in, and like
that words can change meaning over time. Or sounds, or that's cool. Yeah.
In like the context, it's like whatever your life's context is in can like shift that. And I'm curious if that's something that you can relate to, or if like, I don't know if you can speak to that at all.
Yeah, well, to bring it to the last album, that's something that I've been striving for a few years to do in writing in music, is to present the same words repeatedly, and for them to very intentionally or be trying to design an experience so that each time the reader or the listener encounters them, they see them in a new light. They're like, oh, I thought it meant that, but actually it means this.
Mm-hmm.
Or it meant that back then, but it means this now, but it still means that there. But like, how is this, you know?
Yeah.
The prime example would be the word last.
Yeah. Oh, the ending of the album blew my fucking mind.
Nice.
It really did. Like,
right.
because that was something where I'd been racking my brain a little bit, cause
Mm-hmm.
like the last album, the last journal, and
Mm-hmm.
everything, and I won't attempt to explain it, but like I did have this sense of what I thought that meant, and then
Mm-hmm.
by the end of it, where like especially on the website, your website, like
Mm-hmm.
I think especially accentuates that meaning, or like emboldens it in a way, like, or
Cool.
draws attention to that, like it's like a whole experience together, and it changed that a lot.
From like reading those individual pages or going through them, is that how that did that, or where did it land for you?
That's who I've been kind of like not racking my brain, because when I was listening to it, I tried to like meditate to it. Cool. In a way, like, and try not to think too hard, because I think as soon as you start thinking too hard about it, you start intellectualizing it and rationalize it rather than like letting it be what it is and
Mm-hmm.
let it wash over you. But a lot of it came from knowing you, and like, well, I think even if I didn't know you, knowing you adds a lot more depth to it because I have like a personal connection with you. But
Mm-hmm.
I think based on, if I were to like imagine myself as someone who didn't know you and was encountering your website and experiencing it in that kind of way that you intended it,
Mm-hmm.
I would have still been able to follow the story and see like how meaningful all that was to you. And I think that at the beginning, it's just this last is such as a word that feels like an ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then at the end, it sounds like a new beginning.
Nice. That's awesome, dude. Yeah.
Is that like, what is that? I'm curious.
That's
like,
beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. But I'm curious, like, because I mean, and you talking about, you use the word design, like designing the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does that even look like? Like, how do you go? What do you think about? Like, that seems so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To design that experience to where, ooh, yeah, I don't know, dude. Like, I'll just say what I'm thinking. First, I had to live a lot of the stuff that I wrote about and sang about. And speaking of rawness, like, feeling like I was doing things for the last time. That's kind of where it started, you know, to get to a place in my life where I was like, oh, I think I'm reaching an ending of some sort here. and it, or reflecting on things that had happened to me, and thinking like things were supposed to end there. That could have been the last time that I had a drink, took a breath, you know, and then understanding that it didn't have to be. Yeah. And then, man, I don't know. And then designing that. Yeah. I guess maybe designing that came from like, okay, I will present people with this word that will suggest, like, just seeing that word on its own makes you think like, oh, the last album. Okay. That's the last one. That's it. We're done here. Right.
Yeah.
And then, through the course of putting the songs together, understanding that the word could have multiple meanings, that you could be in last place, or you could be the last in line, or this could be the last time, or you could resolve to do something that lasts, you know. And yeah, I came to that conclusion that that's what I wanted to say. But then I realized, like, to make that land, you know, I'm going to have to stretch this out over the course of many pages and many minutes and tracks. And so.
Yeah, that's exactly how it landed.
Awesome.
Like that, because I can't remember exactly the wording of it, but I think I can just tell you about the feeling of it, of like it really feeling like last in the sense of like an ending, like, or like but at the same time saying it's something that will last, in terms of like it's forever. And the other part that I thought was so fucking cool was that the last journal also has extra, like the half of the thing is blank pages.
Yeah.
And like I'll be straight up, like I just straight up lost it. Like I did in several times throughout it, because I especially in like, I think realizing that like it was like a bearing of your soul, like in your heart, and like things that are really deep and personal to you. And I felt like I was getting to know you in a way that like I don't think we could get to through conversation.
Yeah.
Or unless we, unless over like decades of friendship, but like that is a peak in there that's so that goes beyond what you can talk about, like, because it is, I don't know, I don't have the I don't have the terminology to talk about the sounds and all those things, but I can just but we can all talk about how we feel.
Sure.
Or not. Yeah. Well, I guess not all of us. Like it's harder than it looks, but but I think the having those blank pages at the end too, almost it just left me feeling like I need to use these to write something. And I think for me, just personally, I've been wanting to tap into my creativeness, my inspiration to like write without like no one's gonna look at it, and like that it's like that raw sort of just uncurated thought and feeling, put it on the page. And I think what your experience did there was inspire that.
Dude, that's perfect. I'm glad. I thought about, so I started putting these songs together in earnest in like the very beginning of 2017. I spent a month doing almost nothing but writing, probably 75 to 90% of that music, and writing some stories as well, and thinking at that time, like, how am I going to present this to people? How am I going to help inspire this idea that you can embrace who you are and what you think? And I was like, oh, I don't even know what I planned to put in the journal, but I was like, I'll have a journal that comes along with this album. And I don't even remember what I was thinking about writing in it.
Yeah.
But it took me 5 years to actually execute that idea.
Yeah.
It took me 5 years to actually execute that idea and I don't know, eventually I was like, oh, the thing that needs to go in this journal is stuff that I actually have written or would write in my own journal, and hopefully that does that for other folks. So that's cool that it did.
That's interesting to hear that. Like, are you saying that was sort of your intention from the beginning of it?
It wasn't, not until I had written the majority of the music did I come up with that, or did that idea hit me.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but even then I didn't know how to do it or what it would be. But
because based on your like the journal itself and like music and let me just keep calling it the experience, based on the whole experience.
Yeah.
I got the sense that time that you spent like just writing and kind of locked away from the world. So that's the sense that I got, like that you locked yourself away from the world a little bit and
For
did all
sure.
that. It almost had a dark undertone to it. So it's almost surprising to hear that you were thinking so forward about like other people in that, because I feel like it's so easy to feel isolated in that sort of thing.
Well, I should maybe expand that narrative a little bit, because that was the thought of at the end of that 1 month of writing. I finished writing a lot of the music, and I had written some stories, and I kind of emerged from that month of locking myself away, being like, I did it. Like, it's done. Woo, okay, now I can go live. But then 2 things happened. One was that I don't know if I didn't know how to share it with other people, or if I was scared to share it with people in the form that it was in.
What was the form that it was in?
I mean, they were just like MP3s sitting on my hard drive.
Gotcha.
Pretty much.
Okay.
And a lot of it sounds very similar to what you have listened to. But definitely not the same. A lot of the songs were way shorter. Like that song, Not My Country, that's like 15 minutes long.
Yeah.
That was like 1 minute and 15 seconds long.
Yeah,
Until I returned to it like at the beginning of 2022 and started messing with it and became something else. But the result of me not knowing how to share it with people or how to present it to people, or kind of thinking it wasn't good enough yet, was that even though I was back out in the world, doing new stuff, working at the school I was working at, and then going back to school, and then getting a job and all this stuff, I was still living that very closed up. I was still living like I was locked away. I was not. I was somehow isolating myself from people, even when I was around them. And I kept thinking, like, every opportunity that I get, I need to create. I need to create. I need to create. I need to create. And I lost myself in that. I lost myself in that, and I started to damage relationships for the sake of creativity, for the sake of creating things that I didn't even know how to show to people. You know, so I don't know. I guess we got on this because, yeah, I did have that very hopeful thought at the beginning, but then it became an increasingly darker thing. Like, I don't know how that happened. Yeah, but
that's so interesting. And now it sounds like it's going back towards that hopefulness.
It is, but maybe the misstep that I had at the beginning was understanding that I had said something that I needed to share with people, and thinking that it could even help people, but then not doing it. And I'm still facing that battle now. Like, I'm still like, oh, I'm making stuff, but then I get scared to show it to people, or I think it should only get shown to people if it's happening in a certain context. Like, if I write a story, I can only show it to people if a journal agrees to publish it or something.
Right.
But that can take a long time. And so, or even just like Instagram posts, just being like, oh, I have this idea for an Instagram post, and this is something I've been thinking about for the last week. It's like, I have this beautiful picture of when I drove to New Mexico the other week, of like the sun was setting, and it was kind of raining, and like the clouds are really gray on one side, but there's blue filtering in on the other, and it's through my windshield as I was driving down this empty highway. So there's like droplets of rain on the windshield, you know? So it's like kind of blurry, but kind of clear.
Yeah.
And like I've got that. I'm like, oh, and then I've got these wild sounds I've been making with this guitar pedal, and it kind of sounds like an industrial ocean. I'm like, oh, I just need to put that on Instagram, you know? But then I'm like scared to do it, you know? And I got to get over that. That's it. I should have learned that already, got to get over that. Just got to do it. But I'm on the road to sharing stuff with people, I think.
Yeah. I mean, shit, that's a very vulnerable thing to do, right? Like, especially based on like what I've listened to and read of yours, like it seems so personal. Like it seems like, I think maybe I would only, or like, especially when it comes to the cat swallows the butterfly. I feel like I might have more insight as someone who knows you to draw those parallels. But then it also makes me think that how much of like other authors' stuff as I read had they woven themselves into, and I have no idea, you know, because I imagine it's impossible to do to not do that, you know.
I would think, yeah.
But I'm just curious to hear in your own words, like what that fear is. Yeah.
Fear of rejection and ridicule. That's really what it is, and it's really silly. I mean, I can't count the number of times I've shared something with someone and they've told me like, that sounds so good. Oh, that's amazing. That's beautiful. But those aren't the things that I remember, you know, or I have, the things that stick with me and the ones that I dwell on are when people are like, oh, that's pretty cool, but it's not really my thing, you know, or they just don't say anything at all, which they don't need to say anything. But then I'm like, what did they think? They didn't think it was good. They thought it was stupid. Or I've been in environments where people are very direct, you know, about the shortcomings that they see in my work. And and those are the things that I dwell on. And I'm like, oh, I'm scared of that, you know, but man, I mean, even as I'm saying it, it sounds really silly. It's like, I don't know. It's just, who cares? Why should that stop new things from being expressed or put out into the world? Not just from me, from anyone, you know?
Yeah. I mean, shit, for what it's worth, like, that sounds like a very valid fear. Like,
yeah.
Like, I mean, shit, I'm going to take a wild guess that you are not alone in that.
Oh, yeah. No question, yeah.
But I'm also curious, like, I imagine you've thought about it, like, how do you move past that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is my first thought is that I often move past it very violently.
Okay, this is starting off juicy. I like.
Yeah, it's like I get really aggressive, like or I think it's aggressive. I don't know if other people perceive it that way, but I'll like put things out and I'll be like yeah, I made that. So what?
You know? Almost like overtly being like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah. Like, what are you gonna say about it? You know, I'm preempting. It's preemptive defensiveness. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
That's one way. But yeah, I'm trying to find a more peaceful way of getting through that, and just being like, no, nobody listened to that one. Oh well, here's the next one. You know, something like that. So,
I like one of my favorite rappers recently has been Piff Marty, and he's I think I mentioned to you he's the one that did that song that's like Boys Do Cry. Have I mentioned that to you?
I think you have, yeah.
Yeah, and I follow him on Instagram, and one thing that he had said at one point that really stuck with me was that one of the song that I had heard, because I didn't hear that Boys Do Cry song until after I discovered his first song that I discovered, which was this song called Flex. What I've heard when I was like, this is unlike any other song I've ever heard. Like, this is like immediately one of my favorite songs.
Yeah.
And then he recently, I want to say maybe like a few weeks ago, I posted something that was like, this is just starting the trend or something like that. And I've been putting this song out for like years.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it like, cause you mentioned like onto the next one, but it's like, there's also a point of like just putting it out there, because maybe it's not reaching the people who it would speak to.
Sure.
I don't know.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And I've been thinking, well, you bring up a good point that continuing to remind people and to find new ways to announce that you've done something is important. And keeping a great record, like now keeping a great record of everything you've done. Now, this can sometimes paralyze me, but I'm constantly thinking like, okay, whatever I'm posting, whatever track I'm going to post to the internet, or whatever piece of writing I'm even writing down on paper right now, I'm kind of doing it with the intent that it's going to be preserved. I'm going to preserve it in a digital format, or I'm going to find a physical format that it gets preserved in, so that when something hits, people will be able to look back at all of it. Does that make sense? Is that?
Can you ground that in like an example? So
yeah, let me think here.
Because I think I'm more confused by the preserve it part.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it would just be as simple as like, don't delete the things that you've posted. That's how, like let it stay. You know? Let it stand, and let it be a reference point for people. Even if I get, like in a year, I'll be a very different person than I am today, and I might look back at something I've said here and be really embarrassed about it,
Sure.
But allowing that to just remain, be like, just to be glad that there's a record of this moment,
Yeah.
and allowing other people to access that, even if it is, or maybe it's embarrassing, maybe it's ugly, or maybe it's incredible, but letting people access it.
Yeah. No, that brings about a whole lot of thoughts on, like, I think of my attitude towards like social media and like taking pictures and all that in general, at least historically, and it being something that seems almost like, I guess for lack of a better way, like a little vain and just a waste of time. Like that's how it's, like just like, I'm going to take 1 million pictures of things that I'm never going to look at again.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it feels that way because social media has a tendency to feel inauthentic in a way, or like it. Yeah, maybe that's just about.
I sometimes describe it as, or I have described like Instagram as like disposable. It feels disposable to me. Like it's like just such a transient thing. It's like for this moment, and then like how long does an Instagram post stay on someone's feed? It's like,
sure. And how often is someone actually going back and looking at what might be intended to be the story of someone's life over the past year if they're posting a lot or whatever, but like you're not. Maybe if you did go back and look at all these things, you could get like a real idea of what people are like.
Mm-hmm.
But then actually, now that I think about when I have done that, looked at people's Instagrams, it's usually just a bunch of the same, seemingly the same, like, especially when I was younger, it was all just like selfies, like here I am, like here's just me, because I think it is just like a validation sort of thing, like especially when you're young. But it also has what you're talking about. It seems like I don't know if I want to go so far as to say the intention of it, but like almost like a latent intention of it in a way, like that it can be this beautiful tool to like get a real deep insight into someone's life if you're vulnerable enough to, if you're willing to be vulnerable and put things out there that actually mean something to you.
Yeah.
But it's also scary.
It's scary, yeah. It's scary, and I mean, I post very seldomly on social media. I don't look at social media very often, but again, I am trying to let it be a record of like, this is how I was feeling, acting, thinking in a very important moment, and I'm gonna let you see that.
Yeah. And I guess going back to my original question of like, how do you see yourself moving past that, like the fear of like rejection and
more selfies, dude.
More selfies. Yes,
a lot of more selfies.
That actually just takes. I remember one time. This was like, I think this was right before I moved in. That you had randomly sent me a selfie of you.
That's right. Yes.
And you were like, "Whoops! Like I didn't mean to do that."
Completely by accident.
Was that supposed to go to Imsoon?
It was. Yes, it was. I was like FaceTiming her, and it was like a really nice day, and I like very quickly screenshot, send, and then like 5 minutes later, I was like, "Oh, that was to Will."
I'm kidding. Do you remember what you thought of in that moment?
First, I was like mortified, and then I was like, "This is hilarious."
Yeah. And look at it now. It's what persists is hilarity.
Indeed.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Yeah. But yeah, more selfies and more not really. More rough drafts. More sharing more things in progress. More sounds in progress. That's my intention moving forward. Yeah.
Okay. Are you gonna do it?
Oh yeah.
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 You
so
got some things
so
in the
I
works?
should yeah. This week I'll post that New Mexico Drive rain droplet industrial dreamscape.
Yeah.
It's happening.
I'm looking forward to it.
Cool.
So if I probably go on Instagram. Well, I probably go like once a day, and it all depends on whether or not I get sucked into the real void or not, how long I'm there. Because sometimes I can just like, if I'm sitting at home and have nothing to do or something like that, or if I'm looking for a distraction, I can just get sucked in so fast. But I will be on the lookout for it, because I'm pretty sure I follow 1117 on Instagram. Yeah, because I
pretty sure you do.
Yeah, because you had posted something not too long ago, right?
Yeah, I think. So there's like back in 2015, or maybe it was 2014. There was news of like an AI, some AI rendering software popped up on the internet like way early. I don't know what it was called, but what I do remember about it is that eventually people were like, this AI is just turning everything into like Doges. Do you remember those dogs that were called like Doge?
Oh yeah,
that
yeah.
Doge meme. It was like, it's just taking that and like imprinting Doges over all of it. I don't know what was going on. It was like it was my first contact with AI.
This was 2015.
I think so.
Okay.
Maybe 2014, maybe 2013. But I fed that AI a picture of myself, and it came out real freaky. It was like, it almost looks like there's a third eye like in my forehead. So yeah, that was the last thing I posted.
Apparently you're not third eye blind.
No, dude. It's wide open. That third eye's wide open.
Oh God. I kind of want to circle back to like just what we had talked about in the beginning when I asked you about like what's meaning for you, and you finding, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would summarize it as you find yourself looking for and like making meaning out of a lot of different things in your day to day.
For sure. Yeah.
But you had said something about it almost like muddling things a bit. Can you talk more about that? Like,
yeah,
I know it's kind of broad, but
well, we've talked before about I don't know what book you had brought up, but it was like a psychologist woke up one morning and was like, I'm going to take note of everything that happens to me today. And it was like he couldn't even eat breakfast because
yeah. It was actually some writer, because it was in that book, The Master and His Emissary.
Okay, yeah.
And the author was talking about some other writer that tried to like go live in a cabin in the woods for like a month and make meaning out of every single thing that he did all day every day, and he got there on the first day and couldn't make it past breakfast.
Right. Yes. And it that is kind of what happened. It was so I for a few years I've had the idea of writing a novel that is almost like, it's like recognizably autobiographical. It's like you'd read it, and if you knew anything about me, or even if like this is the trick, is that I even want people who have never talked to me to be able to pick it up and be like, like, this is definitely just someone's thoughts. Like, this person is real, and these thoughts are real, and you're going through the novel, feeling like that. And I want it to be a compelling story, but for there also to be one element of where it's like something happens and you're like, there's no way that could have happened. But then you're like, but all this other stuff is so real. Could that have happened? That's kind of the idea. And I started to write that novel.
Recently? Or is that The Man in White?
That's The Man in White.
Okay.
Yeah, that's The Man in White. Which I started to write it in earnest around March of 2021. It was right before vaccines were hitting.
Okay.
Yeah, we were all going through mandatory isolation at that point, right? And it was
the thick of it.
It was the worst. And vaccines gave me this hope that like doors were about to open up. I was at least going to allow myself to get back into the world and travel and see people that I hadn't seen for months. And I started to write that novel. I started to record everything that was happening in as precise and granular detail as I possibly could.
That sounds excruciating.
It was, man. It was. And well, so I've thought about it two different ways, because although I recognized that I was doing that in March of 2021, I had already been working on that for months, if not years, just by the way that I was writing in my journal. I was like already doing it, and I was devoting an unhealthy amount of my life to doing that. And hold on, lost my thought. As quarantine was ending and I was getting back out in the world, and I was continuing to do it for quite a few months after that. And then when I finally sort of stepped back and realized like I need to let this go, for a while I was very upset with myself, because I was like, I can't believe I devoted that much of my time and mental energy to just like writing down this bullshit. Like, so much of this is bullshit.
Yeah.
And that is one way to look at it. That's one way to look at it.
Sure.
But then later I kind of went back and thought like, in another way, that was my, that was like my way to survive. I was like, I mean, everybody was freaking out around that time. And I was in a very low place. And that one way to look at it is like, I don't, well, the way that I look at it now is that it helped me survive. Yeah. So, yeah. So I got to that point where writing down everything in order to make meaning out of it became overwhelming and kind of confusing. You and I have also talked about like how much sense impression hits you every instant.
Yeah.
And like, if you just try to open yourself to that all the time, I mean, you'll just go crazy, right? I feel like you'll just go crazy. Maybe not. You study the brain, so
well,
you'd be able to tell me. But
no, I don't know about that, but anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It was a really overwhelming exercise. And I found its limits, and then, I don't know. I'm not in that mode anymore. I still see value in journaling and stuff, but I'm okay with letting like 90% of what happens to me, just let it go too.
Yeah.
So
that seems like the sustainable way, at least. Cause like, I would say that like when you said about like, taking in everything, like, I feel like that's kind of what meditation is in a way, of just like letting your attention go anywhere but your mind. Well, anywhere but letting your mind like wander off into like what isn't here, at least. But your brain is like taking care of the rest of that. Like, you are taking it all in. You couldn't possibly pay attention to all of it, but it's still there. But then do draw our attention to? I think that's sort of that's an interesting question to me, in terms of, or like the question being, what draws our attention? And when you'd mentioned before that, like, you were noticing things of like, this laying here in this way, like, or this finishing, leaving off on this particular chapter, this line or whatever, and what that, like, can you give any examples of like that sort of thing? And like, because I'm kind of curious, like, kind of the nitty gritty of like what draws your attention in those moments and what that means to you.
Yeah, man. Well, this is an example from today.
Okay.
And I kind of hoped I was going to have an opportunity to share
Hell yeah.
this.
Here we are.
And I don't know. This is more intentional, maybe. I don't know. So here's what happened to me today. Is that I woke up this morning, and as often happens, I just couldn't get out of bed. I just like could not get out of bed. It just like, I don't know why that happens. It's like, it just hurts to think about going through the day. That happens so often. And I eventually did get out of bed and started doing stuff and cleaned and organized and felt good for a moment, but then just like sank back into it. And I don't know. I couldn't get out. I was just a mess for the first 5 hours of the day or something. And the other day, I bought from Half Price this book by a Japanese author from the early 1900s. His name is, I'm totally not gonna pronounce this right, Soseki Natsume, and he wrote this novel called I Am a Cat, and it is entirely from the perspective of a cat, and it's this cat just like kind of. He lives with this teacher, and then he just like wanders out and like experiences different things in the world and hears different stuff. And a lot of times is just thinking like, why are humans acting like this? Why are they acting like that? Like that's, or like, whoa, he calls him his master, the teacher. He's like, my master is like really arrogant and kind of stupid. Like he'll just be thinking things like this. And it's so random. There's so much just like, there's not much of a story other than that. And it's hundreds of pages long. And I read it a few years ago during another time where I felt very depressed and uncertain about where I was in life. And I just was like, this is just rambling. I don't know why I'm reading this. And yet I finished it. I think it gave me comfort on some level.
Sure.
And recently I've been wanting to get back to it. So I sit down today amid this day of like this morning of just feeling like I can't even get to next week, you know? And there's this story in there where the cat is alone in the kitchen for 1 second. And there's one sticky ball of rice. And he's seen humans eat these things. And he's like, I might never get another chance to eat this thing. Like, I kind of don't know if I should. I don't know if I want to, but this might be my only chance. I might not be able to do this for another year. So he takes a bite of this sticky rice ball, or it's a rice cake, and it just clamps his jaw shut. His jaw is just stuck shut. And he's like, for minutes, like talking about like, I'm trying to open my jaw and I cannot get my jaw open. And he's like, stands up on his hind legs and he's like, whoa, now I'm standing up on my hind legs. And he's like pawing at his face. And then humans come in the room and he's like thinking all this stuff. And it's just this like chaotic story that almost means absolutely nothing. It's such a silly thing from a perspective of a cat, right? And then amid this like 3-page sequence, he hits these beats. He's like, oh, and I just realized a truth. And he says something. And I wish that I could say them off the top of my head, but I wrote them down. So can I share the 4 truths of the cat with the rice cake clamp jaw shut?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought him with you. Hell yeah.
Yeah. I was hoping. Yeah. Okay. So, and these again, he doesn't just list these all in a row. They pop up in like random spots of this really funny, absurd scene, right?
Yeah.
And so, 4 truths perceived while biting the rice cake. Number 1, golden opportunity makes all animals venture to do even those things they do not want to do. Number 2, all animals can tell by instinct what is or is not good for them. Number 3, in conditions of exceptional danger, one can surpass one's normal level of achievement. And number 4, and this is the one that just completely turned me into a normal human being again. All comfort is achieved through hardship. So, dude, that was my meaning, you know? That was my meaning for the day.
Isn't it? That's fucking the crazy thing about all of that is that I think that's what I think there's a lot of people out there that are trying to get people to realize that. Like all of those things, like those kind of like ground truths of being alive. And that, well, first of all, I'm really glad that kind of gave you perspective and turned things around, because that's fucking beautiful. Like,
yeah. That's
so cool, because I know exactly what you like. Obviously, it's your own subjective experience with that, but like, just as another person who also has felt like, I don't want to fucking move right now. Like, fuck this. I won't do anything but that.
Yeah.
Like, to have something like hit you like that, because I don't know that I've ever had that happen to me before. I think it's mostly been something like more basic, like I'm hungry, like, and I kind of need to eat. You know?
Yeah, right. And then it's like, oh, that's what was wrong. I needed to fill my stomach.
Yeah, that usually tends to help.
Yeah.
But all of those things made me think of Kristen had actually suggested this book called How to Be an Adult in Relationships.
Oh, cool.
Have I told you about this?
You said it's like a mindfulness relationship guide, right?
Yeah, but it's so much. It almost feels like it's more like teaching lessons that mindfulness can like reveal when you really look at yourself with openness and acceptance, and like kind of and like let down those sort of resistances that are based on your past. Or like constructs that we humans have come up with, you know, and it boils it down to like, these are the truths, like these are just the ground truths. And one of them is that like, essentially that comfort is born of discomfort, or that like, I want to remember how it was said, but I think it was something along the lines of like pleasure doesn't like, pleasure always like precedes pain, or something like something along those lines. And I feel like that sort of acceptance of that reality is something that is almost it's funny that you bring it back up to like the meaning thing of like, it's so hard to make meaning out of shitty times. It's so, because like, and we were talking about this the other day, like when you're in it, you're like, I fucking hate this is just going to be forever, and I want to die, like, you know, like and it's so hard to like, but when you're out of it, for however the fuck you get out of it, and thank goodness that you do, and then you have that perspective to be able to look back like and see that. I think, at least for myself, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, like that's the stuff that like, when I'm having a moment of like, God, I'm so glad to be here, I will like, it's almost triggers in my brain immediately. It goes back to like some of the hardest times in my life where like I hated being here. And I will both like grieve for that person in the sense of like, man, they were in so much pain and they didn't know how good this could feel. And then also like, so I will like in the most like sort of like most saliently or viscerally powerful moments that I'm really feeling in my body, and it's like really washing over me, like I'll cry, but I'll also just like cackle, like laugh, like it's a, and I wonder how, if I had experienced this before I guess for lack of a better way to say it, like kind of woke up and was really started to have that like mindfulness journey of really like noticing what's going on with me. I wonder if I'd ever experienced that, but really and mistook it for sadness, or like, because I don't know, there's some nuance there, and I think at least when you're a kid, it's like crying means bad, like sad, like angry, or what, you know what I mean? And
totally, yeah.
I don't know. Does that like resonate with you?
Only in that I've had those moments. But you know, now that you say it, like yeah, I had a pretty recent one. And it was like, well, it was kind of weird. It was like this, it was a very acute understanding that I am going to die. You know? And yeah, like knowing like there's no avoiding that. I am going to die. This is all going to shut down. You know, like I was like, everything that was happening to me was like a breakdown. It was like the tears, but then there was laughter too. And I think it was like, there was like, there was relief at knowing that whatever hardship is going on will naturally see an end. And there was joy at knowing that even though there's going to be an end, it's not over yet, you know? And there was like, I don't know. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like when talking about these sort of things that are uncapturable, you know, like, I think that's why I want to do this, like why I want to have these conversations and record them, because, and I guess go about it like with a smidge of intention, is like, how do we get at that? Like I find myself thinking a lot about, especially lately, in terms of like applying for grad school, doing all that stuff, like, because I want to convey in like my essays and stuff like that, like, like that powerful feeling of like, just like, I guess for me, like, I think about death and I think about all those things, and I'm just like, I've reached a point now where I'm like, that'd be okay. Like, I don't want to die. I want to spend as many like beautiful moments on this earth as I can, but like, I want to figure out how to talk about that change. Like when I like came online, because I've been existing. I've been alive for 31 years, but I would say I was sleepwalking through most of that until 28, maybe 27. And then it was, and I think not even up until like maybe the last year have I fully, like this last year, I've been almost like, it was like the first year of my life that I feel like I've spent fully awake.
Wow.
At least like a good chunk of the time. And I think that's also why like like talking to you is so interesting, because you write in such a way, like in your stories, or, you know, I guess the story that I've read, and the writing on your website, and like the storytelling through the journal and your music and all that stuff, that I think that's it. Like that's what really hit me today when I was listening to it, was that like just the depth of connection with another person that like I feel with my own story. And I don't know if I have a question for you, but like I want to, like I just like I want to express that to you, you know, and I don't know.
Dude, I appreciate that. I mean, it sounds like through sharing my experience as deeply as I could, you saw yourself in it. Is that an accurate summation at all?
It's that, but it almost feels like it's a step further. Like I feel like for a moment I really saw you.
Whoa. Yeah. Cool.
on a level that like almost through that, like, because I think I do that whenever I talk to people. I really try to relate and I try to like empathize and see myself in everyone that I talk to the best of my ability.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something that consuming your story in that medium in a way that is so like whatever it is. I'm not going to try to classify it, but that like, yeah, I think it was just a connection with you and your story. Cause like, of course I'm relating it through me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't like actually experience your subjective experience, but like there are things that like, I mean, just the, can you tell me how to, what something sunrise?
Oh yeah. Merapi.
Okay. Merapi sunrise. Cause that's all about like, or at least a part of like your trip and everything, right? Did I get that wrong?
You're correct in every sense.
Yeah. Okay. Just more broader.
Yeah. So Merapi is a volcano.
Okay.
I'm going to be very mad at myself if I get this wrong. On the island of Java in Indonesia.
Okay.
And so literally that song's about a hike.
Yeah.
But there are other layers to it as well. Yeah. What were you hearing in it?
Maybe because I may just be, I think throughout the experience of it, I don't think maybe I'm missing how things are kind of like segmented out, because I'm more referring to what I heard in some section of that was your experience that we had talked about in terms of like your mushroom trip.
That's right.
Yeah. Like that one, and because it really, I just got the sense that like changed everything in a sense.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
And then from there, like, yeah, I think that's where like the details, I've been debating in my head whether or not I want to even ask about details, because part of me is like, I don't know, I'm curious.
Ask away, like if you can think of one with a question. Yeah, go for it. Yeah. But it just with the caveat that I might pose the question back to you.
Oh no, that sounds even more fun.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, maybe I need to experience again, because this, like I said before, I think when I went through it this time, well, let me go back. The first time was like, I think I tried to like overthink it and like intellectualize it and almost take notes of sorts. But then we talked about it a little bit more, and I think after that conversation, I was like, I need to just like let it wash over me and see what happens, like see what the whole of the experience means.
Yeah.
Instead of like trying to look at the parts and like extract like really fine detail from it.
Well, I can say this, that song is about a moment of awakening that I had. It is about a moment of awakening that I had, and I sometimes think of moments of awakening as like mini deaths. It's like you wake up, right? You wake up and you realize like, oh, what I thought about my life before wasn't exactly accurate, or maybe it was accurate, but it's a very distinct understanding of like, and now that part or that version of me has ceased to exist. I understand something new now. I am someone new now, you know?
Yeah.
And I try to capture those moments when that happens. And sometimes it happens on a hike, and sometimes it happens while reading a book, and sometimes it's way bigger than that. You know, sometimes it's a devastating experience that you go through. Yeah. But
Yeah, I think one of the things that got to me the most, I think that because I couldn't pinpoint when like those sort of like feelings of like connectedness really sunk in, but like I would venture to say that it's what's coming to mind now is like in the sort of man, you like it's like you talk about your relationship with your brother in such a subtle way. That's also it's like both subtle and overt, like
Yeah.
because like I think the parts that I really liked the most were where in the journal there's just it ended a conversation not for a day, not for a week, but for years. And then like a couple songs later said it ended the conversation. And I think that hit me like a ton of bricks. And like, and it also like, and going back to the experience was like, there's either no or minimal lyrics in them. And that was an experience in itself. Which for someone who really loves lyrics, who's like, I'm a big rap fan, I love like like the poetry of it and stuff, and just like walking along with this in this story in the context of you, and then kind of feeling in my own sense the gravity of that, because like I have a little basic understanding of what that means to you. In your own words, but like I just feel like that was a moment of like connecting deeper because it was just sound and it was just sitting with like the context of that and then in the sound. Can you I don't have a specific question. It's so hard to like come up with a question, but like is this evoking any thoughts or like
well, I mean, one it's evoking a feeling of appreciation. I'm so glad that you listened and that you were open to it, and to hear that like the sound actually communicated something. I've put out a lot of instrumentals, and I almost never get feedback, so I never know if people are like he doesn't sing on this one, skip. You know. But to hear that it actually evokes something is like, I find myself wanting to sing less and less, thinking that like sounds and textures can communicate more accurately sometimes, and I'm just glad to hear that worked. That's cool. Yeah.
That's interesting to me to hear, because like your instrumentals are sick.
Oh, nice. All right.
Your instrumentals are like that's like that plus the lyrics themselves are like my favorite parts of it. And I think because the lyrics, and again, I don't have the vocabulary to describe like the dissonance and the, you know, all those things, like
there's a lot of dissonance.
Yeah. You know, but like whatever was going on in the sound, I guess the only way I can really put it is it added to it. Like it added to the lyrics, and then the way that it's structured then led to like almost like there's, because it's like it's almost like the lyrics are very wordy. Like there's a lot going on. There's a whole lot of meaning packed in every line.
Yeah.
And then you'll just be like, well, here's just sound. Listen to this. With this context of like this story. And like, was that intentional?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. I mean, it was like some elements came together like kind of serendipitously. It was like,
what does that word mean?
Like it was like a beautiful instance of like luck and opportunity coming together.
Gotcha.
Whereas like okay, so the song "Not My Country" is like 15 minutes, and there are some heavy, angry, noisy, hard driving instrumental elements, and then also that part will drop off, and there are very ethereal synths that almost just sound like heartbeats. And so I'm relating back to that song because you're saying sometimes there's an instrumental and there's a story to read. And so with that song specifically, I wrote the original like 1 minute instrumental for that, kind of in a moment of anger and frustration at having. I hadn't even returned to the States permanently yet, but I was in the States for a month, and I was writing all this music, and I was very upset with the path the country seemed to be on. And that came out. And then a couple of years later, I did end up relocating permanently to the States, and things just seemed to keep deteriorating, and I was capturing all that in writing. And it just became a very long journey with that feeling of like, oh, whoa, we've stepped onto a path, and I'm pretty sure it's going to lead to some devastation. And then devastation did hit, and I was still writing through it, and whatever, all this to say, like, when I eventually came back and I understood, like, okay, I initially titled this Not My Country, out of this feeling, and I expressed that feeling, but now this song has gotten way longer, and I'm also looking for writing to go with it, and it was like, oh, it can just be the whole story of how I came back at a moment when things started deteriorating, and how that felt, and the journey that sent me on. And it was like, I had these writings in the journal, and I had these instrumentals, and then they magically came together. I don't know. Does that make any sense?
It does. It does. Because that's the one where it's just like a few pages worth of.
Yeah.
Like, was that just journaling, or was that written to someone?
Let's see.
Because some of it felt like a letter.
Yes, some of it is a letter. Yeah. Okay. Some of it is a letter, and there might be letter elements of that one.
Okay.
But I don't remember specifically. Yeah.
Okay.
But some of it is definitely addressed. It's addressed to a you. Yeah. And I don't know how much I should say about you, because you is out there, and then I think that readers can also maybe interpret their own you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, because it's like that you is in the context of your life and your meaning. And just like we were talking about the other day, it's like, shit, the beauty of art is like you throw your own meaning and life into it, and then it finds its way to someone else one way or another, and then they make their own meaning of it, and maybe there's some overlap and all that stuff, but
totally. But yeah, leaving room for that overlap, is really important.
I found myself wondering while going through the experience, if I didn't know you, would I have gotten out of it? Like, obviously I don't think it would have been as like profound, because it's like you and I have been connecting a lot over the past, like, however the fuck long it's been that we've known each other. Yeah. I can't keep track of time.
Yeah.
But like, you and I have been connecting a lot, and your friendship means a lot to me. And so like that, obviously no one who doesn't like have that even like at least a relationship with you personally, like isn't going to get that. But like, I wonder if that would be, if the experience would be received in that sort of like in their own context at all. Like, can you speak to that at all? Like, what do you think about that?
I wonder it too. I wonder it too. And I think for years I've been trying to like kind of break that barrier, you know, trying to figure out like, cause I know people I know and love experience it and see something out of it. And depending on how close they are to me, sometimes I think it makes them very uncomfortable. And then I also like, I don't want it to be just a thing that like, you're only going to get this if you have talked to me, you know?
Right.
And I don't know where that line is, or how to get to that point to where it's like the personal becomes more broadly accessible.
Yeah. Who do you know that has, or who's listened to your work? Like who's experienced it like that? I mean, you don't have to give like names or anything like that, but I'm just curious, like friends, family, anyone outside of that?
Friends, family, and people outside of it. Yeah. But the people outside of it, I don't know. I don't always know how far it's reached. Sometimes I get an indication because like somebody will have bought the digital download, or back when I played live, like people would come to shows who I didn't know and things like that. But but I don't know. But I will say, I mean, mostly it's pretty quiet. It's not like I've gained an identifiable fan base or something.
Right.
You know? So.
Well, I guess kind of moving forward then, like, because you've done. Well, first let me ask, in terms of Last, the album, in terms of the album, how much has that been performed live? Like, what experience do you have performing that live?
I've only played one show.
Okay.
And that was that was before the album even came out. I played the songs live, and it was years ago.
Okay. How'd it go?
Hard to say. I felt like I mean, I played great. I know I played great. But dude, sometimes it's weird playing in bars. Sometimes it's weird playing in bars. It's just like, you know you're singing and you're like, there are moments when you're like, oh, definitely no one is listening right now, or it's become their background, you know?
Right,
so,
right.
Imsun loved it. I know that. Yeah, I had a few friends there, and it was a really good time. And looking back, it's crazy to me that like all of the moving pieces worked. And actually, somebody said that to me that night, so I did get some good feedback. One guy was like, "You've got a lot of moving parts, but it all locked in." And it was because like there's like I have like a beat making machine, and I have a looper for the guitar, and like all these things that like it could have absolutely just malfunctioned, and I could have like been mid song just being like, don't know what to say, y'all, sorry about that. But it just like the loopers looped at the right time and the beats hit, and I sang and played guitar over top all of it, so it was cool.
Yeah, because I can imagine that like when all that does come together, it's got to be such a cool experience, because it is like, that's what that dude says, like, is definitely what how I would think of it too, is like there is a lot going on. It's like I really enjoyed listening to it on these headphones too, because I was listening to my car the first time you introduced it to me, and I missed so much that I realized I got when listening to like higher quality sound, that like little subtle sounds and everything. Does that come out in a live performance?
Yeah, to the best of my ability, it does. I try to recreate all of that, like to even, to be able to, what I'm working on now is not only being able to like trigger those sounds live, but to be able to create them on stage, like to make some of those like static, like rhythmic blips start thrumming, you know, like where I'm very, very visibly like stomping on a pedal to make that happen,
right?
Because I've initiated a guitar note and then I've repeated it or something, you know. But I want it to be a thing where it's like I don't want it to be mistaken for I'm just hitting play, you know.
Right.
I want it to be a physical process. Yeah.
as close to it's its own thing, but like you don't want to be mistaken for a new wave DJ who's up there like just touching knobs and stuff, but actually isn't. Wow, I don't know if they're
twisting
actually
knobs. It's harder than it looks.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Is it looks like it's nothing, but I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. Yeah, that's. So it sounds like you want to take this thing that's already pretty fucking complicated, and make it even more complicated.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, how does that like?
Another option is I've been thinking like, I'll start just by playing these things on acoustic guitar, because there's a way that I can do some rendition of them on acoustic, or most of them. And let the words and melodies, bring those more to the forefront instead of the whole like soundscape thing that's going on. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean the acoustics are like some of my favorite parts.
Oh, cool.
That and the the percussion and some of the like, because the percussion is usually like, at least from what I am remembering, is like a lot of just like rhythm keeping in a way, but like there is some like depth to it as well beyond just like the rhythm keeping. But then there's like. I wish I could tell you which song it was, but there was one song. Maybe it was the one that comes after "Not My Country." But there's just one where like there's this subtle sound that comes out, and it just made me feel so good.
Yeah, nice.
It was just like I wish I could.
I'm pretty sure that song's called "Night Drive." Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. There's nothing but a bass drum. It's just going like dum dum dum.
Yeah.
But the whole time, yeah, there's a lot of wild sounds on that one for sure.
Yeah, that's got to be the one, because there's no lyrics, right?
No lyrics, yeah.
Okay, and that's actually you mind if I if I pop this out, because I think Night Drive was one where I remember there was a lot of that was like a more wordy, like letter seeming like
that one actually just says no words, but it's because it comes after. Well, it's not because, but it comes after "Not My Country," which is like pages and pages,
Gotcha.
I thought people might need a break.
No, like, I think that actually brings me back to when I first heard your music, because I remember asking you, because it was when I was staying with y'all over at Trevor's.
Yeah.
And I was like, I listened to part of the album, and I got to "Not My Country," and I was like, what's going on there? Like,
yeah, I remember.
Why is that 15 minutes long?
I remember you asking that.
Yeah.
And I remember not having a great answer at the time.
No, it was just an answer, because all you said, I remember all you said was like something like, I got the sense it was just like, because I felt like it.
Okay, cool.
And I was like, all right, right on. Like, fuck it. Like, what?
That's about why. Yeah. Yeah. I started jamming on the synth, and and that jam turned into a 15-minute thing. And and kind of the reason I decided to largely leave it unedited was it was like the first time that I felt like I had like touched the soul of the machine. Like the synth, it was like whoa, I'm like communing with this synth right now. Like there is an electronic wavelength flowing through it, and that and I are one at this moment. So I had to leave it.
I mean, just because I felt like it is a great reason.
Nice.
But that's like a profound reason right there. Like, that's so cool. It like, in the sense that like you, because I think where my thoughts go when you say that is like you were able to manipulate it as in like an extension of yourself.
Yeah.
Is that sort of what you mean?
Totally. Yeah.
That's so cool, because like that's what I imagine like some of the best like I mean, that's what an instrument does, like whenever you master it, right? Like that's what that looks like.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that with any other instruments? Or have you reached that?
Dude, good question. Possibly not. I mean, if there's anything, the closest. Okay, yeah, actually, I've had that with guitar.
Okay.
And it was like there was like one instance of that that I very clearly remember, and it was probably 15 or 16 years ago. Like I remember, I like soloed over a friend's song, and for once it was like, I'm not thinking about what notes I'm playing. It's just that they're coming out. My fingers are, I don't know what's happening. but they're doing it, you know?
Yeah. Oh man, I think that's the shit that when I think of meaning making and all that sort of thing, I think music, art, poetry, like all those different forms are like the closest we get to like truly expressing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm so interested in that, like that sort of flow state of when an artist or someone who's like connected with this, with their voice, with their thoughts, with their, you know, like everything like syncs up in a way where it just is what it is, and it feels so right. Because I imagine that's like what some like our greatest musicians have done in the past and all that. Do you?
I think, yeah, you're right. That's where true musicianship happens, and then maybe like the best musicians are the ones that are able to find their way back to that over and over again.
Yeah.
You know, or they don't even have to find their way. They're just like, oh, I'm there.
Yeah.
You know?
I wonder, like, how do you think you do that? Like
playing a lot in a lot of different contexts, and probably loving what you do. And maybe working through the times when you're not loving what you're doing. Because, yeah, that happens.
Can you talk about any times where you've played through that and
done
that?
I hope I'm coming out on the other side of that now with music, where I've gone through a few years of music kind of sounding and feeling dead to me. Like I'm like I was saying before, like I sense that there's like an artificial quality to what's happening. It's all a performance. Somebody arranged this. Somebody designed this to evoke a feeling in me, and I'm seeing through it. You know, like it's like a skepticism and a cynicism, which is probably also born out of like a fear of like, I don't really know how to do it or something. And so I'm going to, you know, shit talk everything I hear or whatever.
Sure.
But I hope I'm coming out on the other side of that with music, where it's like, oh, whatever comes out is okay. And it's just awesome that melodies are flowing through this world, you know, like, and that they make me want to dance sometimes, and they make me want to cry sometimes, and sometimes they're funny. And I have been there with writing, and I'm working through with writing too, on both sides, where I'm like, can barely read. It feels like too much work to move the pen or to sit at the computer, and coming to the other side and being like, actually, this can be the easiest thing in the world if I just stop thinking about it. Yeah.
That's got to make those times when it is hard so frustrating, whenever you know, like, there are times where it's like, this just works.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the thing that the frustration is like born out of fear too, because it's frustration born out of a fear that you're never going to find your way back to the flow state. Like being like, oh, that was all an accident. You know, I don't really know how to do that. I did it once, but I clearly can't do it again. You know, like those kinds of things will pop up, and like that just gets you further into not feeling the flow.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's an interesting line of inquiry in itself. Like, I imagine it's so impossible to like capture, because it's like, I would think that those sort of things are born of experience, like just doing it again, like you're talking about, like doing it in different contexts and all those things. And while in those contexts, paying attention and being able to interpret, like, well, I'm in a state where this works, and this is that. Like, okay, now I'm not. What should I do? What do I do now that's gonna get me away from thinking all those self-defeating sort of thoughts of that spiral you deeper into the slump and get to the other side of that. Yeah. I just figured I would open up because I did want to. Would you be willing to tell me about this?
Yeah.
Like,
what do you got?
This is. Yeah. I'm just gonna turn this to you. And I don't like
God.
and then
It's one of the rawest.
and the following pages as well. And you can go into as little or as much detail as you want. And actually, would you mind like reading it?
Yeah, I can read it. Cool. So I'll just read this entry.
Yeah.
All right. My brother wrote a story about a guy who goes to retrieve his older brother's body after said brother drowns while living in Korea. And the story opens with the younger brother smoking in bed with a girl with the same name as the one I was trying to. I'd been gone so long, my best friend had written me off as dead. But even more upsetting, the story was better than anything I could write. So instead of sending the feedback he asked for, I told him, Koreans don't have middle names. But on Facebook, hers is, they don't have middle names. That shut down the conversation, not just for the day or the week, but for years. It wasn't until I started swapping stories with other writers in Colorado that I understood killing off siblings in fiction is just something writers do. It wasn't until I reread the story that I found the part I should have been paying attention to all along. A couple of kids wading through a wooded creek, turning stones over in the moonlight, trying to catch salamanders.
It's so funny how, I mean, funny is definitely not the right word, but I just like opened it up and I was going to find something before and I was like, fuck it. Like, I'll just like whatever this will open to. And that just happened to be it. But that was also one of my favorite parts of the whole thing.
Cool.
Do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah. I mean, it's, my brothers are my best friends. My brothers are my best friends. I mean, I have a lot of best friends. But, yeah. I'd do anything for those guys, you know? And that was a lot less complicated when we were younger.
Ain't it always?
Yeah. That was a lot less complicated when we were younger. And everything was very well, I don't know. I look back on it and say everything was really pure, and that there weren't a lot of other like that our desires didn't conflict with each other's and all this kind of stuff. But I'm sure that kind of stuff happened too. But part of a lot of what's going on through those stories and those songs is me understanding what it's like to become an adult and still love my brothers and recognize our flaws and my flaws and look back on the moments where and realize like, oh man, there are moments when I am very petty. I can be really petty, you know. It's like, and then being like, and I did that to my brother. I can't believe I did that to my brother, you know. And like thinking like, getting mad. I had anger for years, being like, why don't we talk like we used to? Why don't we talk like we used to? Why don't we talk like we used to? And then having some clarity and being like, well, I might be responsible for a lot of that silence, you know. Yeah, that's what that's about. And it's also still like, I called it the rawest because it's like, in communicating that through songs and stories that I share publicly, I'm not letting that moment die. You know, it's like it was very important to me to write a song and a story that communicated some real moments of conflict. But I do that at the risk of keeping that conflict alive, you know? And I think I hope people can forgive me for that, but I've done that to a lot of people. Like, I write things to get through them, and then I feel like I feel like I have a responsibility to share things often, and then I'm like, oh man, but yeah, I hope people can forgive me for that. That's or that they, I don't know. Ideally, it would help us both get through moments, you know. But me and the people that I go through things with. But I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
Wish I had something deeper to say right now.
No, yeah, that was a lot of words.
No, they're beautiful words, and I really appreciate you sharing that. And
but I should say the biggest violence I did to my brother in that story was like the thing that's beautiful about it, the ending of it. That's an image from his story. Like, I want to make that known.
Yeah.
He wrote a story, you know, a beautiful, beautiful story about our relationship. And I guess, you know, he was doing the same thing. He was working through tough moments that we had. And he's the one who found that memory of us wading through a creek and finding salamanders. And I say he was writing fiction, but I, you know, like you've talked about with my writing, I was just seeing through it and being like, but he's writing about me. But yeah, dude's a good writer. I stole his image. I hope he publishes his stuff so people can read it and see how gifted he is.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the sort of like self-indulgent, selfish nature of like expression, like that feeling of it and stuff. But and also like, I feel like it also like that sharing of that story also speaks to like when I was experiencing that, because I read, like, I figured that was part of his story, right?
Mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm.
that's how I read and everything. Mm-hmm. And I read that as someone who saw that they fucked up.
yeah.
In terms of like latching on to these details that like didn't matter, instead
mm-hmm,
of seeing that like, oh, this is my brother expressing something in a way that I actually know I know about that. I know how it feels to express yourself through writing and to work through things in writing. And here he is like writing this thing, and now you realize like that was what was important from that.
Yeah.
Have you talked to him about that?
I don't think I have. Oh no, I have. Okay. I have. I definitely have. I remember because I wrote the song. And then I got a chance to see him, and I told him how good it was. And I don't know if it set him back on the path of writing. He's joked a few times since then, like, I'm retired. But I at least reminded him that he's got it. You know, I mean, I think everybody's got it, but.
Sure.
That he, if he wants to nurture it, you know, that he should.
Yeah.
So.
I feel like that's a good place to end.
Cool. All right, man.
But thank you so much for doing this. And like, it's so funny that I had moments throughout this whole thing where I was like, I can't believe I said I was nervous to begin with, but I don't know. I hope you felt the same way, but like, I felt like this was such a good conversation.
Yeah, dude.
It felt very natural. Like our like our conversations always are.
Yeah, I agree. I was able to just get lost in it. So so thanks.
I feel like I want to do this again with you though.
Oh, I'd love to, dude. Anytime.
Because as we're talking about things, it just there's so much to talk about.
Yeah,
it never ends.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Thank you again. This is
awesome. Can I plug that journal?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
If people want to read and listen to it, they can go to 1117music.com/last, and then you can page through electronically everything that you've got there on paper and listen to the songs at the same time. So
well, I just like, in case anyone, this is like, because this is like a beautiful journal too.
Yeah.
It's so nice to feel and everything.
Awesome.
Well, shit. I am not a podcast host yet, apparently. Well, I guess, now I am. Now I need to remember, like, do you want to plug anything?
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and cut this off then. Sweet.